What camera do you use? What frame rate do you shoot in / what frame rate should I shoot in? How do you color grade? How can I start working with professional teams? How did you get your job with the NHL? Does gear actually matter? I know I'm gonna get myself into a trap with this question. Okay, so here's the situation. I'm currently at Toronto International Airport. We have 4 hours until my flight to Edmonton for Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final is set to leave. We're unfortunately on a bit of delay, so I thought I would come on here and do a quick frequently asked questions video because I get a lot of the same questions all the time, whether it's in my Instagram DMs or my YouTube comments. So I'm just going to make a video addressing the most frequently asked questions I get as a sports filmmaker, videographer, around the gear I use, my workflow, my creative process, so I can give you guys an easy way to answer and see the answers to these questions in this video here today. And without further ado, we're just going to go ahead and get right into it because I have some time to kill. First question is, what camera do you use? Now, if you've been a fan of the channel and my content for a while, you know that my main camera is the Sony a7S III. I've used this since it came out. I absolutely love this camera. I don't see any reason to change to the FX3 anytime soon. And if Sony ends up dropping a a7S Mark IV or an FX3 Mark II, I'll probably end up switching to that at some point. But for the time being, the a7S III has been my main ride or die for the last little while. This is actually being shot on the Sony a7C Mark II, which is a fantastic camera. I use it as my B camera a lot. I use it for stills and I use it for these YouTube videos. It's small, it's portable, and it's a great full frame option as well. Those are the two main cameras I shoot video on, and I also have the Fuji X100V, which I strictly just use for stills, whether it's for travel and fun or even for professional moments at work. I got to shoot the Stanley Cup Final locker room last year in it with that camera, and it gave me some great images. I love the fact that you can just have images edited in camera ready to go. Those are the cameras that I use most often. I have a handful of other ones, but I have previous gear videos which talk about those other camera bodies. Second question, what program do you edit in? Now, I've been a Premiere Pro user for the better part of almost 7 years now, and I don't see myself switching. And before people start commenting that DaVinci Resolve is a better program, whether it is or it isn't, at the end of the day, no one is gonna ask me where I edited my videos and judge me based off of that. The end products speak for themselves. And at the end of the day, I'm just more integrated into the Premiere Pro workflow and ecosystem with Adobe. I'm able to use After Effects and Photoshop seamlessly. DaVinci Resolve is another program I've used. It's great, but I just haven't had the time or opportunity to integrate my workflow into that space. And at the end of the day, I'm already a quick and efficient editor on Premiere Pro, so I don't see myself switching anytime soon. And I think Premiere Pro does everything I need from it and even more at times. What camera should I get as a beginner? That is a very personal question, one that I can't really give you a straight answer for. It really depends on your budget and how much you want to spend. In my opinion, if you want to take this line of work seriously, if you want to get a camera that can give you great images off the bat and you don't want to break the bank, I would say having a budget of anywhere from $800 to $1,100 is probably a good bet, because you're going to get cameras at that price point that can shoot 4K, that can shoot 120 frames per second. Even at times now, some of these cameras at those price points even have 10-bit 422. The Sony a6000 series is a great series of camera for beginners. I had the a6300 for like 4 years before I upgraded to the a7S III, and it did wonders for me. Cameras like the a6700 are a great option. I am very integrated into the Sony workflow and ecosystem. I haven't really used other cameras. I know that Lumix just came out with the GH7, which seems like a great camera. I've never really used any of the Canon R series, but they're also great cameras. But if I'm telling you what camera to choose, it's more effective for me to probably tell you the budget range. I think, like I said, anywhere from $800 to $1,100 is a good price point to get a camera that will get you a good image quality, give you something that can produce really great video, and also not have anything that gets cut out at that price point. I think if you go below $800, you're honestly better off shooting on your phone these days. So that's kind of my answer for what camera should you get, or what price point you should get your first camera at. What camera monitor do you use? This is probably the most frequently asked questions I've been getting recently, especially when I post any kind of behind the scenes image or video of me using my camera. Everyone always loves asking what monitor I use. I use the Atomos Shinobi 5-inch. I absolutely love that monitor. I got it for like around $300. Great image quality. You can load your own LUTs in. You have so many great tools. That sound is really annoying, so we're gonna wait until that stops. Like I was saying, you have a lot of great tools available to you on that monitor, things like false color, things like peaking, so many different things that I think making an efficient monitor. A lot of people then ask me, why don't I just get the Ninja? Because I don't need internal or external raw recording, and that's the biggest reason why. The Ninja and the Shinobi, for the most part, are the same monitor, except for the fact that the Ninja allows you to record raw externally on the A7S III. But number one, I don't have the hard drive space to shoot raw all the time, and number two, I've never really had a client or a job ask me to shoot raw, so that's the reason I choose the Shinobi over the Ninja. But they're both great options. That's just what I use. What frame rate do you shoot in / what frame rate should I shoot in? This is a very situational question, and it really depends on the content you're trying to create, the story you're trying to tell. It really is a personal choice a lot of the time. Now, in the past, I've definitely said I shoot everything in 120 frames per second. When it comes to sports, that's changed, especially in recent years. Now I'm switching between 120 and 24 during the game. Pre-game and post-game, I'll usually shoot 60. If anyone's ever talking and if I'm capturing audio, I'm gonna shoot 24. But it really just depends. In my edits these days, I like to have a mix of real speed and slowed down footage because I find it's more attention grabbing and retains people's attention when they're watching the video. And also, as much as I love shooting 120 frames and getting to slow it down, there's also something to be said about the cinematic, and I hate using that word, but the cinematic motion blur of 24 frames in sports action. One of my favorite shots last year from the Canadian women's soccer team was a goal shot in 24 frames, and I was really happy I got it because there was just so much energy in that clip. Energy that I don't think I would have gotten if I shot that in 120 frames. So the frame rate you should shoot in is purely dependent on the content you're trying to create, on the story you're trying to tell. It's a very personal decision. I will say though, if you're just starting off and you want to try and get as many highlights under your belt as possible, shooting in 120 frames is a great way of kind of guaranteeing yourself a good shot, because if it doesn't look good at full speed, you can just slow it down to 20% of its original speed and you'll be able to pick out the best part of the highlight. But at the end of the day, it really is your choice, what you're trying to do, that should determine the frame rate you choose when you're shooting sports. How do I get started in sports videography? I've made a video kind of about how to find opportunities, and I'll link it here in the description below. But the best thing you can do to get started is just to get your camera, get your phone, whatever you're shooting on, and go shoot whatever sporting events you have access to. Whether that's high school, local, youth sports, your local rec league, go and capture stuff, go and start creating content. If you just sit around waiting for the right moment and don't get started, work is never going to come to you and you're never going to improve as a videographer, content creator, storyteller. You need to get out there, get your camera and start creating at the level you have access to. Don't worry if you're not shooting college basketball right away. Don't worry if you're not shooting, professional hockey or pro football right away. Go to what you have accessible and start shooting and creating whatever it is you want to make. If it's a short film or documentary, go ahead and do that on your local soccer team. If it's highlight reels for Instagram, go and shoot your local basketball teams. Go and shoot the youth leagues in your area. All you have to do to get started is to go out there and actually start creating the work you want to be hired for. It is not that difficult to do. And honestly, with these days with social media, a lot of teams are looking for people to create content for because it attracts people to go play with those teams or those leagues. So as long as you're offering value to those organizations, there's a very good chance that they're going to be more than happy to open their doors to you and let you come and capture their team as much as you want. And I'm very much living proof that this is something that works. When I was in university, I had nothing to show for. I got my first camera and I just started shooting what was accessible to me. And at the time it was university sports. And that was a very big part of my upbringing in this industry. And it led me to where I am today. So the best way to start is just to get out there and start creating content with what you have accessible to you. Can I come shadow you? Now, this is a really difficult question and one I get a lot because as much as I would love to have people come with me and shadow me and get to see what it's like to work at these sporting events, I'm not the one in control of getting media passes or credentials. That is usually someone I'm working with on the team to get. And a lot of the times sidelines can be very full of people and there might not be the opportunity just to have a spare one for someone to come shadow me. As much as I would love to give people that opportunity, I'm just not in the spot to give that access to people right now. And I know other people in the industry get this question a lot. Instead of asking people if you can shadow them, I would suggest maybe changing that question, asking, hey, I love what you do. I want to learn from you. Is there any way I can provide value to you? You may not get access to games and arenas and stadiums with that ask, but what it does, it shows that you're not just willing to learn, but you want to offer something to the person you're reaching out to. And that, for me at least, is a lot more interesting of an ask, because when you're asking someone to shadow them or to get access to a game, you're asking, but you're not really giving anything in return. In this industry, it is very much a you scratch my back, I scratch your back. By offering value in that sense, you're offering something to them, whether it's assisting them with an edit or maybe, you know, offering to help them during a practice. That's also a different opportunity that you might have more ease getting access to. So instead of asking someone to shadow them, maybe ask and offer the value to them to assist them and to learn from them. And you might get some results to find some opportunities that way with someone who has more pull or someone who has the power to get you into these situations to get experience with. Next question is one I also get very, very frequently, and it's one that I know that if you're a YouTuber or a filmmaker on YouTube is the bane of your existence, and I say that kind of jokingly, and that question is, how do you color grade? Now, color grading is very subjective. It's a very personal thing. What works for me may not work for other people. I have talked at length on TikTok and Instagram and even here on YouTube about how I color grade, so I'll leave some videos down below, but if you go through my channel, there are a few color grading videos. For the actual process that I use, I color grade using Premiere Pro Lumetri colors. However, recently I've been using Dehancer Pro, which is a really cool plugin that allows you to emulate film. I made a video about that recently if you want to go check it out. But the main thing about color grading is understanding that, number one, it's a very time-intensive process. A lot of people think that applying a LUT is the one and only way to do it, and once you do that, you're done. Like, no, color grading is something that takes time to learn. There are also steps to this. Like, some people want to color grade with footage that's overexposed or underexposed. There are steps to this. Make sure when you're color grading, or you're even getting into the process of learning how to color grade, make sure you're comfortable with getting a good image out of your camera. Make sure your image is properly exposed, whether you're shooting a log profile or a Rec 709 style profile. Make sure that your image looks good coming out of camera. Make sure you're taking time to color correct your image before you apply a color grade. So many people just want to rush and slap a lot on it and call it a day, and I think that's the worst way of learning how to color grade. And this is also coming from myself, who sells LUTs and digital products. I always say to people, these will only work if you've gone through the due diligence of making sure that the image out of your camera is looking good to begin with. A LUT will not fix, or even a color grade will not fix poorly shot footage. So the main thing to keep in mind when it comes to color grading and my process with how I color grade is making sure that the image coming out of camera looks as good as possible in just even a Rec 709 profile before I add any creative grade to it. I'm not going to go through my entire color grading process in this video because, like I said, I have made videos about it in the past, so I'll link them down below. You guys can check them out. I will say that my color grading process and how I do it changes right now from project to project depending on what the client wants or what the asks are. It really isn't the same every single time, but those videos will give you an idea as to how I base my color grades and start them off. But just remember, if you don't have a good image to begin with, a color grade will not fix your footage. Make sure you're learning how to properly expose and how to properly shoot video on your camera first, and then go into the learning how to correct the image afterwards, and then the grade itself. It's a process, and trust me, if you don't rush it, you will learn so much more and become a better color grader or colorist through that process. Next one is also a really popular question. How did you get your job with the NHL? Now, I'm going to give you guys the very brief version of how I got my job, because if I gave you guys the full story, we would be here for a while. Maybe that's a topic for a future video. But the way I got my job at the NHL, to put it shortly but very directly, it was a result of 5+ years of just putting in the work and being patient. I've been at the NHL for 3 years, and the 5 years leading up to that, I was working my tail off in university, shooting my university sports teams. Like I said before, I was working at MLSE as a video editor. I interned at a few places. I just took any situation I could find to put in the work, to shoot, to capture, to create content, and continuously grow my brand in my own work. Whether it was for a company or even through freelance projects, I put in the work for 5 years until the opportunity came across my path. A lot of people seem to think that these jobs and opportunities are just simply you find the job application line and you throw your hat in the ring. That's part of it, but at the same time, you have to build up your skills, build up your reel, and create the content you want to be hired for. And that's what I did for those 5 years leading up to my job at the NHL. And then when the opportunity came my way, I had a reel, I had a portfolio of work that was ready to go, that helped me put me in the best situation possible for when I went through the interview process. The other part of getting the job at the NHL was knowing someone who already worked there. Part of the battle with finding opportunities is getting that reel, getting that, portfolio of work under your belt. But the other half is networking and getting to meet people. I've stressed this in so many other YouTube videos before, and I tell people all the time, who you know is just as important, if not more important, than what you do. Now, in my situation, it was a combination of both. I had the portfolio that I worked on for 5 years, but I also knew someone on the inside. Porter Gray, who's the NHL graphic designer, one of my closest friends, and now my roommate, was already working there at the time. And when I went through the application and interview process, I simply just reached out to him and asked, hey, do you know the people hiring for this position? And if you do, can you put in a good word for me? Now, I don't know exactly what he said to them, but they definitely acknowledged the fact that we knew each other during the interview. And I just think having that person on the inside made a lot of difference, especially when it came to my character, because my work definitely speaks for itself and did at the time, but there's something else to having someone vouch for you in those situations. And I'm just as thankful that Porter took the time and the energy to put me in a good situation in the eyes of the people who were doing the hiring at the time for that position, because I don't know if without him I would have gotten that position. That being said, though, it is a combination of the two. You have to put in the work and you have to put in the time networking in order to find these positions. But that really is the story of how I've gotten every job pretty much up until this point in my career. Even when I was with TSN in the past, a lot of you guys know I used to do graphic design for Bar Down and TSN. I had a friend who was working there already, who I expressed to him that I was interested in any position that came up. And when a position opened up, I got the inside track because he let me know ahead of time and he was able to vouch for me while I was going through the interview process. So that was kind of how I got my job at the NHL, was 5 years of putting in the work and really grinding and creating my brand and my work, but also having the network of knowing someone on the inside who could vouch for me and put in a good character reference for me. And those two things resulted in where I am now as a full-time employee now for 3 years, and really honestly having the best job I could have ever asked for. Next question is, how can I start working with professional teams? This is going to build on from what I said earlier about how you can get started. Once you have a portfolio built up from shooting sports in your community, sports that are accessible to you, you can start reaching out and offering value with your skill set. I actually made a video last year about how I got to shoot for the Canadian national soccer team that explains exactly my process on how I reached out to them and offered my skill set in exchange for access. I will also leave that link down below, but the gist of it is I just reached out to them and said, hey, I'm a local in the area. I've been shooting sports for X amount of years. Here's my portfolio. If you guys need any help or support during the game in Toronto, I want to provide value for you guys. And the key word there is provide value. I've said this before and I'm going to keep stressing it. Providing value is so much more important and will get you way more responses than just asking, hey, can I come and shoot? Or hey, can I get a media pass? Offering something in exchange for access is your best bet for finding access to these professional environments. Now, it really depends on your portfolio as well and how long you've been doing it. But the more you work at it and the more you keep throwing that line out there, the more bites you're going to get and the more opportunities will come your way. What is the most memorable shot or your favorite shot that you've ever captured? This is a great question. 3 things come to mind. Number 1, when I was shooting Ryerson women's basketball in my last year of university, they went undefeated and won the national championship. And I will vividly remember the shot of them storming the court and jumping and celebrating together. For me, that's more of an emotional kind of connection to that team. I had a lot of good friends on that team. I was with them that whole ride. For me, it was really the ending of a long journey that resulted in them winning the ultimate prize at the end of the year. The other 2 are both of my Stanley Cup final shots, specifically 2 different cup lifts I got in that moment. I have one of Gabriel Landeskog lifting the trophy after Colorado won the 2021 Stanley Cup final. And last year was Jonathan Marchessault lifting the cup. There was also a Jack Eichel one of him lifting the cup. And those 2 are kind of in the same realm. But just those Stanley Cup lifts will always be memorable ones for me because I've grown up watching hockey my whole life. And just the experience of being on the ice, feet away from the Stanley Cup being lifted is something that I will never forget and something that I'm incredibly grateful for. Things that I'll tell my kids about one day. So those are kind of the most memorable shots or my favorite shots of my career so far. And hopefully I will have many more to add to that list in years to come. Does gear actually matter? I know I'm going to get myself into a trap with this question, but in my opinion, yes and no. I don't think gear matters when it comes to storytelling and when you're just starting off. I genuinely think some of the best storytellers I know could tell a great sports video story and capture incredible things with something as simple as an iPhone. That being said though, I think you can outgrow gear, and that's when it starts to matter. For me, there's a very specific scenario that I remember when I had my A6300, and I just remember at one point I just felt like I wasn't getting the image that I wanted out of the camera anymore. I couldn't push the colors enough. I wasn't getting the quality that I think I needed to have for the work I was trying to do. Some of the footage felt soft compared to other things I was seeing out there. And at that point in my career, I knew that if I wanted to grow, I needed a better camera. But keep in mind, I had that camera for almost 3 or 4 years before I even upgraded. So I don't think gear matters at the start, but I think as you grow as a creative and as a videographer, filmmaker, the gear does start to matter when you start to outgrow it. So it very much depends on how long you've been doing it, but I don't think having the best camera makes you the best content creator. If you learn the skills and the basis of your ability as a storyteller and a visual creative with the gear you have access to right now, you will be that much better when you're going to bigger cameras or more expensive lenses or anything along those lines. So gear matters until it doesn't, or it doesn't matter until it does. One of the ways, basically, gear doesn't matter until you outgrow it, is what I'm trying to say. What is your workflow / process for backing up your footage? This is important. If you are not backing up your footage, you're making a mistake. I've had a hard drive die on me once with footage I didn't back up, and it broke my heart. And ever since then, I've adopted backing up my footage into 3 different locations, 2 physical storage locations and a cloud-based one, just because you never know when a hard drive is going to die on you. It happens. You might lose it. It might break. Back up your footage in 3 different spots. You will not regret it, believe. For me, I usually have the projects that I'm currently working on, my active projects, on a Samsung T7 hard drive, and then I will back up any footage I get right after a shoot. For me, right after any kind of shoot or game that I capture, I take my footage and put it on a Samsung T7, which is usually my working or active projects drive. Then when I get home, I back it up onto like a 12 terabyte tower I have, and I have a number of these, and I just like having that second physical copy just in case. That always stays at home, and then I back it up onto a cloud service. I used to use Google Drive because when I was in school, I had unlimited storage, and they just took it away this year, which sucked. But I use Backblaze now, which is basically a program that makes a mirrored copy of your hard drive. And essentially, if my drive ever failed, they will actually send me a drive with all the footage that I backed up. The thing is, it is a mirror, not a copy, not a cloud copy per se. So if I take a project off that hard drive, it'll be gone from the cloud, but it is a very good alternative and an affordable one to a lot of the options out there. But whether it's Backblaze, Dropbox, Google Drive, make sure you are investing a little bit of money in storage space for the cloud and backing up your projects there, because that is a very safe place for them to be, and also one you can access from pretty much anywhere in the world. I think this will be the last question I tackle in this frequently asked questions video, and I think it's a good one to end off at. What do you want to do in the future of your career? This is a great question. I've always said that I'm going to be open to any opportunity that comes my way. At the end of the day, I want to be a creative director one day for a sports league or organization. That's my ultimate goal. I also would love to produce, shoot, direct, or work on a high-level sports documentary, something like a 30 for 30, something like a Netflix sports documentary. I love that long-form storytelling. That's kind of where I want to end up, but I'm still young. I'm turning 27. I still have a lot of time on my hands, so whatever comes my way is where I want to see myself. And I'm always looking for opportunities to grow. I'm looking for opportunities to learn in my career, no matter if it's 6 months from now, a year from now, or even 10 years from now. If it's a new opportunity for me to flex my skills or improve on them, it's something I'm going to take. But like I said, at the end of the day, I want to be a creative director somewhere. I want to work on a high-level documentary. I want to just tell good stories or build an organization's brand somewhere. It's kind of where I lean and where I'm leaning to in terms of the future of Mike. And that does it for this frequently asked questions video. Thank you guys so much for asking these questions in the first place, for being so interested. And if you made it to this point in the video, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to leave a like down below. And if you learned anything and you want more content like this, also make sure to subscribe down below, as I would really appreciate it. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.